so she's very happy. Okay, we're up to the new pair, Behema Hamakasha. Let me see if I can get the sound going. Pointer. Okay, here we go. Okay, Zok to the Gemara. Behema Hamakasha Leiled. Let me just make sure that we have proper audio. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh, we're back in business. Behema Hamakasha Leiled. So there's a behema that's giving birth. V'hoitzi ha'ober es yadai. The ober stuck its hand out, and then v'chsira and brought it back in. The halach is mutar b'achila. The Gemara is going to have a discussion. What's mutar b'achila? Is the uber mutar b'achila, or is even that arm that stuck out mutar b'achila? And it's going to be a machlokes if even the arm that stuck out, v'balt it was back in during the shechita. V'balt was back in during the shechita. Could be it does get the heter shechita. Imagine this mother is in labor, and if she thinks that's bad, she's about to get shechted. She's having a bad day. Haitzi as roishay. What if the uber stuck its head out? That's already a game changer because that's an official birth. Afal pishach ziroi harezeh kiyalud. That's considered born already, and therefore it's not ba behema, and it will not have the heter of shchita. Chayteich me uber shebeme'eh muter b'achila. What if a limb of the uber was cut off surgically inside, never left the animal? So that still qualifies under the heading of kol asher ba behema toichelu. It was inside the behema, and therefore it will get the heter shchita of the mother.
He left the severed limb
inside. However, minat chaylu minat kloyos. But if a limb or an organ of the actual mother is cut, that's going to be osir, and we know that from psukim. Zaklal dovar shagufa osir. If a part of the animal's body is cut out, that will not have the heter of kol asher ba behema. V'she'ena gufa, but if it's part of the uber mutter, that will have the heter shchita of the mother. Why did the Mishnah pick punkt tachol and kolayos? Because they are the only organs that if you cut out, the animal wouldn't be a treifa, and the other organ would defeat the whole purpose because it would then be a treifa. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, the Aver Atzmai Osir. The hand that stuck out, that once it's stuck out, even if it goes back in, that will never receive the heter shchita of the mother anymore. And when the Mishnah says mutar b'achila, it just means that the mother is mutar b'achila, because the mother never left the womb. My timer, the uber never left the womb. I apologize. Yeah. My time, the Amar Kra, it says in the pasuk Ubasar Basada Treifa Loisechelu. This pasuk is a general halacha for anything that leaves its perimeter that it's supposed to be within. As Rashi says, Ubasar Basada Kloimer Chutz Lemichitzasai. Anything that goes out of its bounds. The Hainu La'avir. In the case of an uber, it means it left the mother and it's now in the atmosphere. In other words, it left the gedarim or the mitzarim of its mother. Sherechem zeh havalei mechitza latir b'shchita. What is its boundaries? The rechem. In order for it to receive that shchita. V'chivin sheyatza, once it leaves the rechem, harehu ketreifa, now it has a bit of a treifa v'loisei chelu, and it cannot be eaten anymore. And any other thing that has a gvul, for instance, if basar kochim left azara, nami mehai kranafka. So from here we learn anything that leaves its designated boundaries becomes osir. Why does it have the word treifa here? It could have just said basar basada loisechelu. Why treifa? That's also something that the Gemara is going to darshan. Zog the Gemara weiter. Kivin sheyatza basa chutz l'mechitzasai, whatever that mechitza might be, nesar it becomes aser. Tanan we learned, behema makasha leileid, v'hoitzi abu'es yadai, v'chzira muter b'achila. That's our Mishnah. My lava aver. Maybe even the aver is muter b'achila. So you, Rav Yehuda Marav, said the aver is aser. Maybe the aver should be muter b'achila. It says muter b'achila. It doesn't specify. It's highly inclusive. Even the aver. So it's only going on the uber. Freik the Gemara. Uber, if it's going on the Uber, my ear yehechsira, if it's chzira, afilu lo yechzira nami. Even if the mother was shechted while the bird his leg stuck out, the Uber inside would be kosher anyway. So what's the meaning of yechzira? If chzira would help at least to be machshir the aver itself, I understand why the Mishnah says chzira. But if the mother is kosher and the vlad isn't, so whether it's a chzira or not, the mother stays kosher and the aver stays aser. So why does the Mishnah use the word chzira? Why does the Mishnah discuss a case of chzira? Zokamar ein chadami. It's redundant. Hu adin the afal gav the lo chzira, it wouldn't make enough. Kamina lahalocha. The aver would be aser and the mother and the baby itself would be mutter. So why does the Reisha say a case of chzira? Since it's not relevant, the Adi de Kaboy Mishnah Seifa. In the Seifa becomes very relevant. Because what was the Seifa of the Mishnah? Haitzias Roishai, where the animal stuck its head out. There, Afal Pishach Ziroi Hareza Keyalut. If the Uber sticks its head out, now it's considered to have been born. It's no longer included in the heter of Kol Asher Baba Hema Toichelu. Even if the animal returned its head, it's still going to be aser. That's an important chiddush that the Tana has to tell us. So Vibalta uses that loshon in the Seifa, Tana Nami Reisha Chechsira, but in the Reisha there is no chiddush whatsoever in the Chechsira. It's all because of the Seifa. The Seifa my kamash malon. Now that everything hinges on the Seifa, so there better be a good chiddush about chsira in the Seifa. So what do you tell me the chiddush is? The kivin the yotza roishai havel aleida. That's the chiddush. Once the head of the uber leaves the mother, this animal is considered born, and returning the head back into the mother will not help. That's the big chiddush. I don't need our Mishnah to tell us that chiddush. I know that Tanina. I have already learned it. And where did I learn it? When it comes to the birth of a human. Up until now, in our Mishnah, we're talking about the birth of an animal. But we learned this by the birth of a human. Now we know there's more than one halacha of Bechor. There's something called the Bechor Petarechem that requires Pidyon Ben. And there's also something called the Bechor for Nachla, who receives Pishnayim of his father's estate. But what qualifies one to be a Bechor of Petarechem, the criteria for that is different than that is required to be a Bechor for Nechosim. So it's possible you could be a Bechor and get Pishnayim, yet you're not a Bechor when it comes to Petarechem. And how is that? Ezel Bechor lenachla, ve'enei Bechor lekayhanim. What criteria would a Bechor have if he's only a Bechor lenachla, but not a Bechor that requires Pidyon Ben? Habo acher nefelim. If a nefel was born first, that person is still entitled to Pishnayim. But if a nefel was born first, he no longer gets Pidyon Ben. So, Habal Acha Nefelim, Afal Pi Sheyotza Roishoi Chai, even though the first older brother, his head came out alive, so now the second one is no longer the Petarechem, Oy Ben Tesh Sheyotza Roishoi Meis, or if it was a fully developed fetus that was a stillborn, nevertheless, that's called a petarechem, and therefore the next brother born will not receive Pidyon Ben. Yet the next brother born will, in fact, get Bechor L'Nachla. Why is that? He's not petarechem. What is the criteria for Bechor L'Nachla? So Zok Rashi, Bechor L'Nachla, for Nachla, but in order to be considered the firstborn for nachla, bo'inon vlad sheyeroyu lachyos. It has to be a viable vlad. So therefore, v'mloi royu lachyos, if the brother that preceded this bechor could never have possibly lived, for instance, he was a premature baby born, or it was a stillborn, loy mafka es abo achrav milita el pishnaim. He will not seize the status of a bechor, and the next one born, even though it's not a pet rechem, will still get pishnaim. The chsiv, when it comes to bechora of nachla, it says reishis oinoi. Reishis oinoi means misha libe dova olav, someone who your heart gets connected to. A stillborn baby, the parents don't get connected to yet, and therefore yotz vlad she'ein shel kayama, a vlad that could have never survived. There she'ein lev aviv dova al moisai, a person's not ba'avelus when they lose a stillborn. Not that it's a party, but it's not ba'avelus, and therefore that does not qualify as a firstborn lenachla. But when it comes to pidyon haben, there the criteria is merely peta rechem. Avul pidyon habechor poiterhu es bo'achrav. He will pater the next one from pidyon haben. Sharezeh potar es harechem. So zok to Gemara. So Nevel Rashi just tells us is shaloikolu chadashav, meaning it was not a fully developed fetus. So zok to Gemara taima deroishay meis. The whole reason why, the fact that when it was born and its roish came out, we're talking about the older brother, is because it was a stillborn. Ha roishay chai. What if it wasn't a stillborn and the head of the baby came out and while it was alive? That would be a real bechor, and therefore habo acharav bechor lenachla nami loyav. So you see quite clearly that when the head is born alive, that's a complete birth. So why do I need our Mishnah to tell us that? I already know it from the Mishnah bechor.
3 lines up, it said,
that's a nefel. By a nefel, meaning it wasn't fully developed, so it was a fetus that could never have survived.
And then Bentes is a fully developed.
But it was born dead. But if you have a fully born fetus that was born alive, that ceases the bechorah.
So what's the deal?
So you see that once the head comes out and it's born properly, the head part, the child is considered completely born, and now that child is the bechor lenachla. Should it die later, the second brother born after that, would not be a bechor lenachla. So you see clearly, just the head coming out it's considered a complete birth. So why do I need our Mishnah to tell me it? So going back to our Mishnah,
Why do I need a Xavier?
but the whole reason why I said Chesina ratio is because of the Seifa, and we were banking on this mega chiddush from the Seifa. We don't need the Seifa either, because we know that the birth of a head is a full birth. We know it's from Bechor L'Nachal. V'chitema ashminin ba'adam v'kamat shmalon b'behema. Just because we know the halacha that Roisha is a birth by a human, who said that same halacha would apply to a behema? Why would you say there's a difference? The adam mi behema lo yalef. You cannot learn from an adam to a behema and vice versa, because the ein praised by a behema, the womb opens up and the baby comes right out. Masha'enka in a human, there's a vaginal cavity which is actually a long, narrow birth canal that the baby has to get through. So therefore, the fact that it still has to get through a birth canal tells you just because the head came out, that doesn't mean the rest of the body is out, because there's a whole birth canal. Masha'enkein, by a behema, the moment the head comes out, the thing is wide open and the baby comes right out. So just because you know that the head being born by a behema is a complete birth, not necessarily would you apply that to the birth of a behema. Zokt Rashi, the behema less praisdar lifnei beis harechem shalah, and therefore v'golihu, the moment the rechem opens up to let the head out, it's wide open. You can see inside, everything's there. Its rechem, its uterus cannot be seen from the outside. Shayurechayim Havala came praised her. There's a birth canal that goes through her hip area, so it doesn't open up right away. So therefore, from the fact that we know that by a behema in our Mishnah, the birth of the head is considered a complete birth. Lav dafka would tell us that halacha by a human, and vice versa. The choshev parts of panim dida. The face of a person is distinct, it's unique. That's an identification of a birth. But a behemoth's head coming out, it's no different than a leg coming out. It's ochmira aver, right? And therefore, you wouldn't know one from the other. So therefore, you still need our Mishnah to tell us that the birth of a head of a behemoth is also considered a full Leda. Zokt Gemara, but I have another Mishnah that tells me specifically by a behemoth that the birth of a head is a Leda. Hanami Tanina, because the Brisa teaches us, Shilya Shiyotza Miktsasa. What if the Shilya came out? The Shilya is mush, but we don't know what that mush is, dissolved. It could be a dissolved arm, but it could be a dissolved head. So if Shilya came out, and we can't identify what body part it is, it's possible that it's a head. So Shilya Shiyotza Miktsasa Asur Bachila. That will now make the whole animal Asur Bachila, because maybe the head was born. As Rashi says, Shilya Shiyotza Miktsasa Asur Bachila, Afilu Mashaya B'Fnim B'Shashchita. If a little bit of Shilya came out, you automatically say the animal is considered born, because maybe that part was head. Levisha Shilya, Siman Vlad Be'isha, Vis Siman Vlad Be'behema. Shilya is a Siman Vlad. V'chayshina Dilma Bahim Miktas Tenofik Yotza Roish. Maybe this mush is the head that's dissolved. V'hava Kiyalud. So you see from here, not only is the head a Leda, even a dissolved head is a Leda. Hilchach Kula Asura, therefore now the whole animal is Asur, even the part of the Shilya that remained inside the animal during the Shechita. The Shadina law, Basaresha, because we consider everything born once the head is born. Amaroshai Tanan, the Havaleda. So you see clearly from this Brisa of Shilya that even a Suffolk Rosh being Noilad will be considered a Leda. And therefore, the Sefer de Ketani Echzira Lo Yitzrach. So now the Sefer of our Mishnah that says Echziroi, meaning that the head being born is considered a birth, I don't need our Mishnah to tell us that, because I already know this from the Brisa of Shilya. So Zok Rabishlam Echzira Dereisha Dafka, if you're going to go back and say that there is a Chiddush in Echzira Dereisha, and what will be the Chiddush of Echzira Dereisha? Is that even the Aver itself becomes mutter, then turn the Sefer to Reisha, because there is no Chiddush in the Sefer, because I know it's from the Brisa of Shilya Shiyot Samiktsasa. And loy the Reisha Dafka, v'loy the Sefer Dafka, if there's no Chiddush in the Reisha, and there's no Chiddush in the Sefer, lama lei l'misanya klal. Why b'chlal did the Tana discuss a case where it came back in?
Maybe the Brisa we haven't even reached it yet. This Mishnah is first. Is learning the halacha because of this Mishnah.
The Gemara doesn't usually have that. The Gemara usually says if once it's mentioned in one place, there is no reason to mention it in another place.
But maybe that Brisa, the reason.
So maybe the argument is, if this was written first, maybe the Chiddush should have been there and not there.
Not even, that's
So from the fact that it was there, maybe that was written first, because the Mishnayos were all written random and then they were organized into an order.
No, I'm asking a little deeper, not just because of first and second, but maybe the Brisa of Shilya is based on the halacha of our Mishnah that it's Roisha. Because now you're saying, how do you know
it's based on that halacha, but that doesn't mean our Mishnah needs to tell us that.
You wouldn't need to say it either. If you know this halacha, then you don't have to tell us.
Then I'm not telling the other.
Well, actually, that's not true, because we have to tell you that Suffolk Rosh is a lady as well. In our case, we would only know if the Rosh Mamish is born. There's even Suffolk Rosh. So you just have to say that and not this. That's what the Gemara is saying. Once I have the Brisa of Shilya, why do I need this Mishnah? Zokt Gemara. So therefore, la'olam ha'ober. Weiter, it's going on the Ober, meaning only the Ober is mutter and the Aver is not mutter. Once the Aver left, even if it comes back in, it's not mutter. So then weiter, what's the Chiddush of Echsiroi? The Teretz is Echsiroi does make an afkumina l'alacha. Uchad Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is going to tell us regarding another issue on Amud Beis, that is, lo nitzacha ela lamokim chetach. What's going to happen? The animal sticks its arm out. So we know that we have to cut the arm off. We cannot eat that. That has to be cut off from the behema. We could only eat the part of the ober that didn't come out. What about that exact surface that becomes exposed once we cut off the arm? Is that surface also going to be usher to eat? Zok the Mishnah, If the animal never pulled its arm back in, then not only you have to cut off the arm that's sticking out, you have to cut a little piece as well on the inside. But if it pulled it back in, then you don't have to cut off that extra layer. So we're talking about a slice of salami, right? We're talking about a slice of salami. They have to mark it. They do. Now, why should it make a difference of the makam chatach whether the animal pulled its arm in before the shchita or not? Zok to Gemara. Let's see Rashi. La'olam, it's a long Rashi. La'olam muter the katani uber. The uber is muter. The arm that stuck out will never be muter. So Lagabi, what does this hichsira make a mistake? Make a difference? I mean, udekal shaloch hazara mayahani. The teretz is the lamokim chatach mahanya. That's one slice of salami is where it's going to make a difference. The imloi hichsir, if it never pulled its arm back in, then tzarich lo niach mima shebefnim letzarach hitzain ulechoitchoi. When you cut it, you can't cut it right on the demarcation point between the opening of the rechem and inside the animal. Rather, you have to cut a little bit extra out of what's mutter. Why? Shemokem achatach is havdolas hachitzain v'apnimi is going to be aser. That demarcation point, the line in between chitzain and pnimi, will also be aser if the animal did not pull its arm back in. Because it's standing right at the opening of the rechem. So it's saying even though technically if you put a string across, this will be on the inside, but since it's facing the outside and it's exposed to the outside, that surface has to be cut off, which then answers shloimi. It's just a visible surface. It could be the thinnest slice of salami and it would still be enough. It's just the part that was visible from the outside. But if the animal pulled its arm in before the shchita, then ein tzarich lachtech l'tzad pnim ele mitzamtzem v'choitech. You can cut exactly on the line. Umakom chatach will be mutter the karina be behema ba behema. Umishum basa besada leka. There's no problem that it left its perimeter. It never left its perimeter. So that's the nafkamina of Echsir. So the nafkamina is in the Reisha Gufa, and the nafkamina is l'mokam chatach.
Do you even eat the leg meat?
Sure, the front leg we do, yeah.
The actual meat on the leg?
I think so. Tashma behema hamakash shalaylet. Behema was the middle of giving birth. Haitzi uber es yadai v'chsira, v'achagach shachat es imai muter bachila. This is not 100% clear what we're talking about. Shachat es imai v'achagach echsirai aser bachila. Again, it's not clear what it's talking about. It could be talking about the uber, it could be talking about the makam chatach, it could be talking about the leg itself. Haitzi es yadai v'chatcha. What if it stuck its leg out and you cut it off before the shchita? The argach shachat es imai. So then shebechutz is tamei, because not only is it not allowed to be eaten, it's a nevela. It's an iver minachai that's a nevela that has a tumas maga. The aser, and of course it's aser as well. It didn't get the heter shchita. V'shebefnim tahor muter. But whatever's inside is tahor and muter. It was touching the piece of nevela. The moment it stuck its foot out, it was a nevela. We're going to have to discuss that.
The moment it was cut off, it became a nevela.
The moment it got stuck out, it's a nevela.
It's not even menachai when it's stuck in.
Sure. It's also. The moment it sticks out, it's also. But the nafkamina is, the reason why it's not going to make the part, yeah, sure it is. Yeah, the part that's out is nevela already.
It's not.
Only until you got it?
Why? It's not
Only
set.
was okay. We'll see. Shachat asimai. What if you shechted its mother? The achakach chatcha, and only then did you cut it off. So it was sticking out the whole time, and then you shechted the mother, and then you cut this piece off. So the halacha is habasar maga nevela. The basar touched nevela because once you shechted the mother. When you shechted the mother, this mother is connected to a nevela. So when you cut the nevela off, this mother was nevela. Now the reason for this is because up until the point, the leg was nevela right away. The leg is an Nevela right away. But the reason why I didn't make the rest of the behemoth into Tumah is because the rest of the behemoth was not a Michael yet. Only a Michael, a live animal, cannot become Tomei. It only becomes Tomei once it's edible. It only becomes edible once it's shechted. So if you shechted the animal, now the uber is a Michael. It's touching the nevela, the leg, which is a nevela even before it's cut off. So when you cut it off, exactly. So the mother becomes maga nevela. But the leg was always in the vela. The leg was always in the vela. But it can't be mitama the mother, not the mother, can't be mitama the uber that it's connected to until the uber is makabel tuma. The uber will not be makabel tuma until the uber gets the heter shchita from its mother. So therefore, both are maga nevela. Therefore, mayor. I'm sorry?
The third case was Choitzias Yodai.
Right. It wasn't cut off. It was cut off, but the mother was not checked yet. So the leg is nevela, and the uber, the rest of it is inside, is kosher.
But maybe it requires the shchita of the mother to become tummy. That's what it sounds like.
Why? The uber requires the shchita of the mother to become tummy. That's correct. But it's not become tummy because nevela, it's becoming tummy because of maga nevela.
It says it should be about chutz tummy.
Right, because that's nevela. That's a mamish nevela because that doesn't get the heter shchita of the mother.
That I understand. But also should be
right, because when it touched the nevela, it was not an oichel, because it was before the shchita. Since you cut the leg off before the shchita, so then even though it touched the nevela, but what touched the nevela was not an oichel yet. But if you shechted it, now what touched you left it in place. You left it in place. You shechted it, so now when it was an oichel already, it touched the nevela. So even though you cut it off afterwards, but it did touch the nevela before it was severed. Divrei Meir. The Chachamim Maimrim maga treifa shchuta, meaning even though this leg was not shechted, we don't say it's like a nevela. We will say it has the status of a treifa. The problem is a treifa doesn't become tamei. So what does it mean that the rest of the uber becomes tamei because it touched the treifa? It doesn't become tamei if it touches a treifa. So Rashi says it's referring to kochim because there's a chumra legabe kochim that treifa has a tumah. So now let's break down this brisa. Katani miya reisha. Let's look back to the reisha of this brisa. Haitzi uber es yodai v'chzira v'achagach shochat es imai muter b'achila. What is muter b'achila that the brisa says? My love, aver. It's mashma. Even the aver is muter b'achila. So it's shver on what Rav Yehuda said in our Mishnah earlier that the aver, once it leaves its mother, it's never going to be muter b'achila. We'll say here it's also referring to the uber, just like we said in our Mishnah. Freit Gemara, uber, in our Mishnah you can get away with it, but in the Brisa you can't get away with it. Because if we're talking about the uber itself, ema seifa. Shochat es imai, the achakach echziroi, osur b'achila. We can't be talking about the uber, the uber amai osur. Why would the uber be osur? What's the difference if that leg was sticking out or if that leg was not sticking out b'shas the shchita? The uber was inside the whole time.
So our Mishnah is talking about the Mishnah is talking about
the aver. Because the problem is the reisha. Right? The reisha says, Haitzi uber es yodai, v'chsira, v'achach shachar esimai, muter b'achila. If you're going to want to say there that even the aver is muter b'achila, so then you're saying we're talking about the aver. If we're talking about the aver, then what's the chiddush of the seifa? So it must be that the brisa is talking about the uber. So if the brisa is talking about the uber, the ratio of that same brisa, when it says Haitzi uber es yodai, v'chsira, v'achach shachar esimai, muter b'achila, that also has to be talking about the aver. So, in other words, you have to keep consistent from the Mishnah to the Brisa. Yeah, you could say the Mishnah is speaking about the Uber, and you could say the Brisa is speaking about the Aver. But if you say the Brisa is speaking about the Aver, you have to be consistent in the Brisa as well. And the problem is, the Brisa says that it's Mutar B'Achila if it came back in. So if it's going on the Aver, so if it's going on the Uber, the Seif is going to be a problem. Because also B'Achila, the uber should always be mutar b'achila. The uber never left the mother. The uber are ma'aser, so it must be talking about the aver. So once again, you have a right that the aver will be mutar b'achila, even though it's stuck out, but as long as it came back in for the shchita. So will you say the same territory we said earlier? And what the Brisa is saying is, if it pulled its arm back in before the shechita, then the mokum chatach will be mutter, and if it didn't pull its arm in before the shechita, then the mokum chatach will be aser. So we've already borrowed Rav Nachman's teretz twice, but we didn't hear yet where Rav Nachman actually said his own halacha. Is that so that the mokum chatach is what's going to be is what's going to pivot from heter to iser, whether or not the aver was pulled back in? Also he came and he brought with him a brisa, and this is what the brisa said: Parsa hichsir echoil. If it pulled back one arm, you can eat it. Parsoi sechsir, and if it pulled out both arms, meaning it had two arms sticking out, and pulled both in, echoil. Now, what's the chiddush over here? So, Zok the Gemara, what must be the chiddush of this price is, my love, hichsir parsa, if there was only one stocking sticking out and he pulled it in, echoil parsa. I'm sorry, echoil parsa. Loi hichsir parsa, if you didn't pull the parsa back in, then echoil uber, then you can eat the uber. So basically what we're saying is, let's be medayik that if you pull the parsa in, you could even eat the parsa. And if you didn't pull the parsa in, you can't eat the parsa. But the uber is, you're allowed to eat mimanavshech. So here you have a raya, not like Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, who said that once the parsa gets stuck out, the parsa can never be eaten. But Zok the Gemara, so Zok the Gemara, parsa hechser echoil, parsa hechser echoil. My love, hechser parsa echoil parsa. Zok the Gemara, no, the same way we explained our Mishnah originally, we'll explain this brisa. Loi hechser parsa echoil uber. It's going on the uber, but the parsa you can never eat. Freit the Gemara, I uber, my area hechser. If it's uber, what's the difference if the animal pulled it back in? Afilu loi hechser nami. So this is the same kasha we're asking again and again. Here Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said his teretz. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak lo nitzrucha ela lamokim chetach. So basically we have three kashas from three different brises which follow the exact same format in one of these three terutzim. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said that what pivots between hichser and lo hichser is the mokim chetach, and therefore we can use Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak's teretz to answer up all of similar diyukim in other mishnayos and brises.
Why does the Brisa say
2, 1 and 2? Zok the Gemara, v'atrei kroi kanosiv law. It's focusing on two psukim because parsa and parsois is actually referencing a pasuk. It says in the pasuk, v'chol behema mafreses parsa v'sheshes shasa shtei parsois. So it's talking about one parsa, and it's talking about two parsois. And this pasuk is the whole makar that the shechita of the mother is mater the uber. Because what does it say? Malasker ba behema oishet techelu. So from behema ba behema is where we dash in this whole thing that the shechita of the mother patters up the child. And in the pasuk that discusses that, the pasuk says parsa and parsois. And the question is why? Like Shlomi is asking. Once we know this halacha, what's the difference if it's one parsha that stuck out or if it's two parshas that stuck out? It's the same halacha. So what extra halacha are we learning from shtei parshas?
But isn't a parsha the hoof?
Yeah. So it's the leg. If you stuck the leg out and pulled it back in.
What about the hoof?
Well, but that's how we're darshaning. Whatever stuck out is also whatever got pulled back in the mutter. There's two psukim. There's parsha and parsois. There must be an individual chiddush in each one. My love, chad la'ever, the chad l'mokem chetach. Maybe one's going on the aver and one's going on the mokem chetach. They'll tell you that the mokem chetach should also be mutter, even though it was stuck, it was outside. So Gemara Loi, don't say that. Say chad l'mokem chetach, the chad l'kolut b'meipar. If the makam chatach was inside, meaning the animal pulled its leg back in before the shechita, the makam chatach will be mutter. And the other one will tell us that kol b'meipar. The halach is, if a cow gives birth to an animal that looks like a camel, and it doesn't have split hoofs, that animal born is not allowed to be eaten. But if you shechted a cow, and inside the animal you found another animal, a baby that did not have split hoofs, that would be allowed to be eaten. So Zogt Gemara, that's what the shtei parsos are. One is for the mokum chatach to tell you that if the animal pulled its leg back in, then the mokum chatach is mutter. And the other is to tell you, even if you found a camel in the stomach of a mother, when you shechted the mother, the camel will be mutter. And this is only a chiddush for libud Rab Shimon, because only Rab Shimon says that if it was born, it would be osir. The Omer Rab Shimon, kolot ben parah is osir. So from this pasuk we can say, once it's born, if it doesn't have split hooves, it's going to be not kosher. But if you found it as a ben pekua in its mother, shari, it will be mutter. And that's what you learn from the two limudim of parsa and parsois. So this is the shita how Rabbi Yehuda learned our Mishnah, and that is that once the uber sticks its arm out, that arm will never be mutter again, even if it's pulled back in. But Ula has a difference of opinion. Ula Amar B'Yechanan, the Ever Atzmai mutter. Ula learns that if it pulled the Ever back in and you shechted it, the whole Ever will be mutter because it was inside the mother during the time of the shechita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda le'Ula. Rabbi Yehuda obviously argues. So he asked the Kash on Ula. For Rav Shmuel Damri Terveyu Ever Atzmai Osir. They agree with me that once the Ever goes out, it's Osir. How could you say it's mutter? So Rabbi Yochanan said, Ula Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, I love Rav and Shmuel. I love them. I think they're the greatest. But I disagree with them. I wish I can have the earth of Rav and Shmuel, of the earth that they stepped on, and I could put it on my eyes, meaning that's how choshev they are to me. But unfortunately, I can't agree with them here. Every type of thing that leaves its perimeter would be included in the Isser of Basar Besada Treifa Lo Yisechelu. But the problem is, there's one unique case that should have been included in the klal, that the Torah decided to say a specific halacha about it, that if it leaves its perimeter, it's usher, even though we could have learned it from Basar Besada. The Torah tells us that a chatos that went where it didn't belong, and this came out in the discussion of Aaron and Moshe by that Seir Chodesh that was burnt, and Moshe admonished them for burning it. So in that discussion it came out clearly that had it Hein Lo Yotza, had the Basar Chatos left the Azora, it would have become possible, and even if it came back in, it's Osir. Chatos Yotza Chutz L'Mechitzatza V'Chazra Asura, Chatos hu deparat Rachmana ba. V'balt, the Torah specified by Chatos that once it leaves the Mechitza, coming back in will not solve that problem anymore. We could be medayik that all the other things that become possible when they leave their perimeter would become mutter if you bring it back in. I will call mili kivan the harder shari. Therefore, even though this limb left the mechitza, left the womb of its mother, but the balt that came back in, it's going to be mutter. So this is the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds if it comes back in, it's mutter. Meisvei. Basar b'sada treifa lo yisechelu ma talmud loimer. Why do we need to know that if something leaves, it's also? We already the fisher. Matzinu b'ma'aser sheni b'bikurim. Ma'aser sheni b'bikurim are exceptions to this rule. There, she'aval b'sheyotzu chutz l'mechitzason v'chazru they'll be mutter. So ma'aser sheni you took out of Yerushalayim, if you took it back in, you can eat it.
3 second rule.
Right? That's right. So yochol av zekein. You might think that all the other things are like that as well. Talmud loimer treifa. So that's why it says treifa. Why does it say treifa? My Talmud loimer omer rabba kitreifa. Ma treifa kivin shenitreifa shuv ein la heter. Just like treifa, it's irrevocable. Once it gets its psil treifa, it's not going to become ois treifa. Af basar kivin sheyatza chutz lemechitzasoi shuv ein la heter. So you have a meforish limud that tells us from a brisa that the pasuk that talks about perimeters uses the word treifa. The word treifa tells us that it's irrevocable. So therefore, tiyufta do lo tiyufta.
What's the tiyufta? Why couldn't you say the same answer?
The what?
Just like I said before, that it says chatas, so stuff the chatas, not this. So the same thing over here. It says treifa, but that not.
No. Ubasar b'sada, it's not only treifa. Any basar b'sada is puzzle. Any basar that's in the sada, meaning that it left its perimeter. Any basar b'sada is like a treifa. Now, any basar b'sada is like a treifa. Meaning, just like a treifa, it's possible and it's irrevocable, so too basar basada, any basar that leaves its perimeter is going to become osir and it will be irrevocable. Amar Mar, lefisha metzinu b'ma'aser sheni ubikurim. Ma'aser sheni bikurim have this 3-second rule, like Shlomi said. Where do you know that? Dichsiv lo yisuchol lecho b'sharecha maser de gantcha. You're not allowed to eat maser sheni b'sharecha only in Yerushalayim. B'sharecha ulo lecho avol yotzo chutz l'mechitzasan v'chazru mutarin. B'marava mas noch. In Israel they learned like this. Rav Amar yesh leida levarim. So this same discussion that we had between Rabbi Yochanan and or Ula and Rabbi Yehuda, whether or not once the aver leaves, is if it's considered usher forever or not, they had the same achloikus, they just expressed it slightly differently. And they had yesh leida levarim, for Rabbi Yochanan or ein leida levarim. In other words, could an aver be born independent of the rest of the animal? If it could be born independent of the rest of the animal, once it sticks out, it's born and it can no longer become unborn. But there is a nafkamina, a nuanced nafkamina, between how you express this discussion. My benayu, ika benayu, lemeser miyat ever shebefnim. What happens if only part of the arm got stuck out, but not all of the arm? In the first machlokes, only the exact part that was outside of the rechem is osir. But if you hold as yesh leida levarim and roiv the aver was out, now the whole aver, even the part that's inside, will become osir. Iboilu, l'divrei ha'omer ein leida levarim. If you hold ein leida levarim, what would be if haitzi ober es yadoi v'chsira, v'chazor v'haitzi es yadoi v'chsira, and then you take on another hand, and the animal stuck out limb by limb, bit by bit, until right the animal was born, but one at a time. Ach lashlim l'rubai. Mao. Miyamin hanofik l'ruba. At the end of the day, right of the animal was born, although piecemeal. Idil makibin the hadar, and then all has to be born at once. Imdim salam makibin the hadar, then what would be haitzi ubes yadoi v'chatcha? As each little piece got stuck out, you cut it off. Ma, would that be considered completely born? The animal was born, and therefore now the whole animal, even what's inside, will be aser. We'll stop here. We're mamish changing gears over here.